to get to on this New Year's Eve. I hope you have New Year's Eve plans, or you're just going to hang out and play Cards Against Humanity or something like that. We played Cards Against Humanity with my family, and it was fantastic. It was more funny than you can imagine. And like, my mom is British, and we played it with all sorts of, like, my brother and myself and all our siblings were home. My parents were playing. Our friends were in on the party. And so Cards Against Humanity got broken out. And then first, 7 or 8 people were playing, and then everybody was playing, and it was hilarious. So if you don't have anything to do, find Cards Against Humanity. Anyway, Wall Street Silver. Let's get to it. Wall Street Silver says today is the last day of 2023. Today is 123. So funny. I already said that, but anyway, wanted to give credit where credit's due. Let's talk about Canadian stuff. Naya says everyone remembers the Trudeau government creating a public awareness of this, debating the House of Commons and on television from the investigative reporting at CBC. No? So apparently, since 2019 and until 2044, we are supposed to be funding the Inter-American Development Bank. So this seems like the same scam, but this is from 2019. This seems like the same scam as the Asia Infrastructure Bank. We give money, nothing gets built, and the Canadian taxpayers hosed, right? I think that's basically what's going on here. And here's the Inter-American Development Bank information sheet. The agreement says Canadian Climate Fund for the Private Sector in the Americas 2, agreement number, blah, duration from March 19th, 2019 to March 31st, 2044. Description, the Canadian Climate Fund for the Private Sector in the Americas 2, the fund aims to catalyze private sector investments in climate change mitigation and adaptation across the Latin Americas and the Caribbean region while promoting gender-responsive, sustainable economic development. The fund is managed by the Inter-Americas Development Bank, IDB, and implemented by the Inter-American Investment Corporation, IDB Invest, which together are referred to as the IDB Group. Organization, Global Affairs Canada, blah, 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 blah. So that's a lot of money. That's a ton of money. That's millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. Could that money help here? Maybe. Here's the president of Argentina, Javier Milei, saying, if printing money would end poverty, printing diplomas would end stupidity. So it's fake. It's false, right? Printing money just inflates the price of everything. It doesn't actually help anybody. And unfortunately, our prime minister doesn't think about the economics at all. Right? He doesn't think about economic policy. That's outside of his pay grade. Colin Rugg says, just in, the U.S. government is dropping 6 charges against crypto scammer Sam Bankman-Fried, including campaign finance violations and conspiracy to commit bribery charges. Catturd says, unfreaking real. It's not really unreal. I couldn't believe, do you remember when this story first broke? And I said, this is never going to see the light of a courtroom. And I was wrong. I guess it did see the light of a courtroom. They did charge him, and he went on a mea culpa tour that I did not expect. So I was definitely wrong about that. But on a long enough timeline, they dropped a whole bunch of these charges. So here's a little bit more about this. Making bribes with stolen money is fine, says Colin, as long as that money is going to U.S. politicians. SBF donated $100 million during the 2022 midterms, pouring tens of millions into dark money groups with customer funds. Some of these groups were linked to Senate leaders, including Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer. Here's Maxime Waters blowing him a kiss. So weird. Right? That's a weird thing. So it is very interesting to me what's going on with regards to the corruption and the open corruption. It's pretty open. Like the 2-tier justice system, you can steal customers' money if you give it and donate it to Democrats. That's the message being sent. Pretty wild stuff. Also, D-Dollar. I saw this, and this is just in our monetary series. It's New Year's Eve. Canadian Parliament hasn't been sitting for a while. News is kind of thin during this period of time. So I'm just showing you other things that are happening around the world today as well. But there is a lot of Canadian news today, but I'd say maybe 60%. Anyway, regardless, the D-Dollar thing is reaching retail in Mexico, says Chris Sky. Here we go. I think that's very interesting. I'm interested to see if the dollar goes down, the Canadian dollar takes a bath. And that's probably not good, right? Like, that's probably not great. Here's Chris Sky talking about what's going on in Mexico.
What's going on, everybody? I am in Mexico right now, actually Playa del Carmen, about to go to the gym. But I wanted to point out a phenomenon that I've noticed because I've been coming to Mexico a lot over the last couple of years, and I've been coming here for over 20 years in general. However, in the last year, something very strange has started to happen. Before, when you would come here, when you would pay for something, if you pulled out American dollars, they would prefer it over pesos. They would literally beg for it over pesos. Now, I'd say around 90% of vendors, including gas stations, most restaurants, and every small vendor, solo peso, no dollar. They don't want American dollars. They don't want you to pay card either. They'll charge you more, but at least they'll take it. Most will not even take American dollars. So what the hell does that tell you about the so-called world reserve currency that's currently the walking dead, already dead and somehow still afloat and not collapsed? But even the average Mexican business will no longer accept your American dollar. And if they do, they'll give you an exchange rate of like 15 pesos per dollar. Yeah. It's getting scary, guys. As for the U.S., you guys got to wake up.
Well, it's interesting. If the U.S. loses confidence in its money, that's bad for Canada. If the U.S. loses its world reserve currency status, that's bad for Canada. And I mean, I think that the U.S. and the West is losing a monetary war that BRICS is winning currently, very slowly. And I like the other point of that is if the money is not certain, people will put it into more stable assets. Bitcoin will be attractive to people. Gold and silver, because you can hold those assets. But I don't know that gold and silver would be viable on the scale we're talking about. So in the absence of gold and silver, Bitcoin is okay. But I mean, there are people, Owen Benjamin, go look at what Owen Benjamin hates Bitcoin. And he had a whole Bitcoin rant about how Bitcoin relies on electricity and relies on this and relies on that. He's like, I'll keep my gold bars, thanks very much. So there are people who are very gold bar traditionalists. There are other people who are very much, electricity is going to be part of our life for, the foreseeable future, even in a collapse. Fingers crossed, right? Electricity means maybe chocolate cereal. So they're hedging on Bitcoin. I don't know, right? I don't know. But it seems to me that people would try to shelter their wealth if the currency started to collapse. And those seem to be the obvious options. Real estate? I mean, not even, right? Like, not even. Holy smoke, if you could afford it. Viva Frei, this is kind of about Trump-Russia. But this, I saw this, and I thought to myself, I've been talking about this for years. Like, Viva Frei has gone completely conspiracy theorist. I've been aware of and talking about this exact thing for a long time. And it doesn't seem like that's mainstream, and now it's hitting mainstream. So that's what I'm trying to illustrate here. It doesn't matter that I scooped Viva Frei. I don't care about that. That's not the point. The point is that mainstream accounts are now recognizing that this situation is happening, and they're talking about it, and that's outside of the norm, like way outside of the norm, because it used to be that if you didn't agree that Trump lost in 2020, Biden got the most votes, all of the things that you're supposed to agree with, men can be women, all of that stuff, if you didn't agree with that, you were crazy. And now people are waking up and saying, actually, hold on a second, they're just blatantly lying about everything. They're lying about everything. Here's Viva Frei. He says, they lied about Trump-Russia collusion for years to undermine his election. It was a lie. It failed. Well, it undermined his presidency. I don't know that it failed. It undermined his credibility in his presidency. They fabricated the first impeachment hoax to try and remove the duly elected president. It was a lie. It failed. But again, it impacted his ability to operate properly as in the role of president. They exploited COVID to change election rules to make sure Trump didn't get reelected. They censored, lied, and suppressed information to ensure Biden did get elected. They allowed January 6th to happen, or caused it to happen, and that's more accurate. It's a complete fabrication. Go look at the tapes. Or they could cry insurrection and impeach Trump a second time. It was a lie. It failed. But people are in jail for it. They banned the sitting president from social media. The sham January 6th committee prepared its useless partisan propaganda report for reasons which have only recently become apparent. Apply that to 9/11, right? Apply that to the 9/11 Commission. Apply that further back in time as well. There are other reports that were taking the narrative over in order to control the narrative and not to get to the truth. The report, back to this, the report, though useless, inaccurate, and a total fabrication, is now being weaponized by activist judges and secretaries of state to try and remove Trump from the ballot. Activist Soros-funded DAs are weaponizing the procedural process to try and lock up the former president and current leading presidential candidate. And these people are accusing Trump of being a tyrant who wants to overthrow democracy. And we're seeing this type of operation, and it's ruthless. It's absolutely ruthless. And it's coordinated, and it's taken years. And they actually did fabricate the Trump-Russia thing, which is not easy to do. They had to have assets who would deliver fabricated dossiers that they would create false stories with. That's complicated. That's not like, oh yeah, that's something that we do in politics. I mean, I guess it is something that we do, but it's premeditated. It's, if this was Matlock, man, they'd have him dead to rights just on that, right? But further, they're powerful enough to impeach the president. Biden hasn't had an impeachment, right? I mean, they've started an investigation. Have they actually started impeachment procedures against Biden, or are they just investigating that still? I know that Johnson announced something, but I can't remember if it was actually doing it or investigating doing it. I think he said the evidence was clear, but still, the Trump impeachment was like, we're impeaching Trump. And then 3 days later, there was a trial and he wasn't. But still, it was, I mean, I'm oversimplifying it. I'm being a little hyperbolic, but it was very, very quick when they wanted to impeach Trump, and they didn't. It's not quick with this Biden thing. And it seems like a slam dunk with Biden because there's a lot of impropriety, right? There's a lot of questions about money and Hunter being paid and Biden being paid right after, and so on and so forth. They exploited COVID to change election rules to make sure Trump didn't get reelected. Think about the power involved in COVID itself and making sure that the world did exactly what they were told. Do you think that was just about Trump? Like, obviously heading towards Agenda 2030, all of the UN goals, the WHO, all the rest of it. It's not just about Trump, but Trump seemed to be standing in the way. But the amount of power to be able to derail an election of a country through COVID seems to indicate these people are very, very powerful indeed. They censored, lied, and suppressed information to ensure a Biden election. Like they did. This is not going too far or saying things that aren't true. It's a lot of power that these people brought against Trump. And it's interesting that now that 4 years, like you're supposed to decanter red wine, right? You're supposed to pour red wine into another bottle before serving it in the glass and letting it breathe or something like that. And it seems like the Trump presidency was supposed to give us the ability to see the insanity. And now people like Viva Frei are seeing the insanity. And that's interesting, right? And when you look at it objectively, right, when you're not mired in it, when you look at it from, with a couple of years distance and you look at what they've actually done, it's jaw-dropping. It's absolutely jaw-dropping. And people are on board with a lot of it because they hate Trump so much, and that's wild too. Here's Chase, and he says, one of the only good things about fascism was its opposition to communism, but somehow the left has figured out how to merge fascism and communism into one political philosophy and call it democracy, all while removing the leading presidential candidate from the ballot on the basis of a crime he has not been either charged with or convicted of. And again, that's the kind of power that I think that we're dealing with. I think that we're dealing with people who can rig elections in Canada and in the US. They use different methods, different ways of doing it, but they achieve the same goal. They put their people in and they showboat about it and they pretend like they're the clear winners. And the continued bad policies that are hamstringing the West are propagated and continued and even shared. I'll show you England's picking up the government-assisted murder stuff, the MAID stuff there. I'll show you that. That should have been in the pre-show. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Melanie Joly, talking about war now, says, last night Russia launched a massive missile and drone strike against multiple Ukrainian cities, including Kiev. Canada strongly condemns these attacks and attacks against Ukraine and Putin's illegal invasion, we continue to stand with Ukraine. Again, this whole thing is unbelievable that we are continuing to double down and triple down on money and positioning ourselves with Ukraine. It doesn't make sense at all anymore. A lot of the experts in that area are saying this is a lost war, and I showed you that yesterday. But still, Canada is doubling and tripling down on, yes, we are going to absolutely continue funding this war. So, whatever you need, Ukraine. So we're sending good money after bad, and it doesn't make much sense. CTV News is reporting that North Korea's Kim Jong-un is saying that he'll launch 3 more spy satellites and build more nuclear weapons in 2024. I feel this is saber rattling, and I feel like this is just more like CTV News saber rattling. Mary says, "What changed?" This is NBC News this is from President Trump's tenure, but full text of the U.S.-North Korea agreement signed by Trump and Kim. The document signed by the leaders pledges the building of a lasting and robust peace regime on the Korean peninsula. So they were working towards peace and no more nuclear tests and all the rest. And so all that's undone, I guess, now, and Kim is back to launching nukes and satellites and stuff. So that's interesting to note, but I think it's more saber rattling. I don't know that I would believe CTV News. I think it's just one of those things, filler for New Year's Eve. Do you remember when Canada was having problems with Eritrean newcomers and they were having fights with sticks and rocks? Well, the same thing is happening in London. Here's Vice Guard, and they say breaking: Eritrean rioters armed with long sticks attacking the police in London. Eritrean diaspora riots have taken place this year in Canada, US, Germany, Norway, Sweden, Israel, and the Netherlands, and many other countries as well. So not great. Why are we doing this? This seems like a step backwards. Here we go. So I feel like, there's motivation. There's some kind of something behind these attacks that are happening in all sorts of Western countries. We just want to come live in your country because we're fleeing something or other in our country. And then they get here, and then all of a sudden, people with sticks are hitting police vehicles with those sticks. Seems very suspect, very sus. Scott Moe, let's talk about carbon taxes and things. Scott Moe says Saskatchewan families can say so long to paying the carbon tax on home heating beginning on Monday. And so that's nice, right? He's passed laws to repeal that kind of stuff and help people in Saskatchewan be able to afford, keep money in their own pockets and choose what to do with their money rather than paying a useless carbon tax. Here is Alberta Secession. He says, it's Alberta Secession Y, and he says, from the clear logical thinkers at Friends of Science, so this is a meme they put together, and top oil producers planning a cap on oil and gas, Canada. Ooh. And then top oil producers not planning a cap on oil and gas, United States, Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, Iraq, UAE, Brazil, Iran, Kuwait. So, right? It's not great. It's not good. It's a bad look because it's not going to work. And, Stephen Guilbeault is radical, yes, but here is a Tesla owner, and he is talking about how he has a Tesla and it no longer works because the battery's fried, and it's going to cost him $26,000 to fix the battery. Can you imagine taking your phone in to have the battery fixed, and it's going to be more than the price of the phone, right? Like, yes, sir, we can replace that for you, but the battery's $900. Like, what? The phone itself was $699 plus tax, so I could just go buy another phone. Yes, sir, but this battery is $900. Well, I'm not going to buy that battery then, right? So welcome to that. Scale it up. Here's how Tesla works for this owner.
All right, so my piece of trash Tesla completely died. And because it died, it's got no battery. Because it's got no batteries and everything's completely dead. This is the complete battery. Everything's done. I had to buy a new battery pack, cost like 26 grand. I'm not buying that. I'm not giving them another dime. But you see here, it's raining. It's dead. I can't access the inside, so I got to see if I could take apart the cone. I got someone willing to pay 20 grand. I can't even access the damn ownership. This is 2022, people. This is what the future looks like. A brand new electric vehicle, you can't even access the damn thing because they didn't think about how to do it. Worst off, they made it so the air conditioning condenser unit dumps all the water on top of the battery, so my battery is full of water, which is why it needs a new one. And now they're saying it's not covered under warranty, even though it started happening during the warranty period. This is why you should never buy a Tesla, people. Thing's complete trash. Stay away from it. Here I am, working like an animal, trying to get the fucking ownership out of the car, and I can't even get that. So, wish me luck. I'll post up another video and see if I make it.
So he can't open the doors because the battery is completely dead. Can't do anything about anything. It's dead. So that's what the future looks like, he says, you know. And the other part is, if you have a Tesla, right, and, you know, you need the car and so on and so forth, we still have the option. I think you can go and buy a relatively cheap, like $5,000. Is that cheap? That's pretty cheap, I think, right? $5,000 gas vehicle. You know, it probably doesn't have bells and whistles. It might have air conditioning. You still have to roll down the windows with the little rolly thing, right? But you could get one, right? But in the future, post 2035, a used car, like a used clunker, a used little gas engine, $5,000, that won't exist. Like an electric car is $60,000 and the wait list is 7 years. I'm sorry about your luck. I'm sorry that you need a car tomorrow, but like, welcome to Canada, man. And you know, there are other people who needed a car yesterday and they've been waiting 6 years. So, you know, we got a delivery, right? A lucky guy got his car. So this is the plan, and we are going to suffer for it unless we are able to derail it, I think. Here's Leslyn Lewis. She's talking about 15-minute cities. This is, I've got a couple of clips to show you. This is just the first one. Here we go.
Mississauga, for example, has a smart city master plan with plans to use data and technology to improve every area of city life, including traffic, environment, education, and social services. Smart city plans are underway in Edmonton, Kitchener, Ottawa, and Deep Cove, British Columbia, which is starting a 15-minute city plan, which is closely associated with smart city initiatives and is sparking some concern amongst the surrounding vicinity. The graph on the screen is from the City of Edmonton. It is their proposal of the Smart City Framework, which they submitted to Infrastructure Canada as part of their proposal to the Smart Cities Challenge. One of the most advanced initiatives, however, was the Sidewalk Labs project, which proposed an integrated, technology-driven 12-acre community in downtown Toronto. The project was announced by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in 2017 in partnership with Alphabet, which is Google's parent company. It was cancelled in 2020, citing uncertainty due to the COVID pandemic. But there was also a lot of pushback from residents over this project. One of the board members, a former privacy commissioner, even resigned from the project because they weren't respecting a commitment to privacy protection.
So she goes through privacy and autonomy. There's a clip from a show from CBC. Hold on a second, I'll show it. It's actually earlier in the show, but here it is.
Is your city? Chances are it's getting smarter by the year. Many governments around the globe are racing to infuse technology into just about every aspect of its city's operations. And I mean every part.
Including public transportation, IT connectivity, water and power supply, sanitation and solid waste management, efficient urban mobility, e-governance, and citizen participation.
And it does this using every buzzword imaginable, from big data to the Internet of Things.
So how does a smart city work? Let's look at 3 examples.
Here in Singapore, the city-state might be the gold standard of the most extensive effort to collect data on daily living.
The government is now deploying systems that can tell when people are smoking in prohibited zones or littering from high-rise housing.
Singapore launched its own Smart Nation program in 2014 and will add more cameras like these so the government can effectively monitor crowd density, cleanliness of public spaces, and even the exact movement of every locally registered vehicle.
Much of the data it's collecting will be fed into an online platform called Virtual Singapore that gives the government access to how the city is functioning in real time. It could help the government predict how crowds might react to an explosion in a shopping mall, or how infectious disease might spread. Over in Dubai, more than 50 smart services from 22 government entities have been rolled out as part of the government's Smart Dubai initiative. Using the government-provided app Dubai Now, you can do things like pay a speeding ticket, which likely captured you on a public camera and then emailed you the ticket directly. You can also use the same app to pay.
What? Here's this app. And if you're driving and you get caught by the speeding camera that's integrated into this app, you'll get a notification that you got a speeding ticket and then you can pay it on this app. Lucky you. Yay. You just have to give your face metrics and probably a bit of blood and, promise of your firstborn and stuff. It's absolutely crazy, right? So this is kind of what I think is coming here. And then at the end here, Leslie Lewis says, these are the concerns of the Conservative Party, privacy and autonomy. She's kind of trying to wrap it up here. I'll play a little bit of it because it's 2 minutes. She takes like a minute on each one. I think she's very long-winded because it looks like a very heavily edited video. So I think she's explaining something and they're like, listen, you put up an hour-long video. We need to put up a 10-minute long video. And they settled at 17 minutes, which is fine. Double time, it's not too bad. But wrapping it up takes too long. So I'll play it, but it takes too long. So to me, I don't know if she's trying to minimize the smart cities or if she's trying to assure potential voters that the privacy concerns they have are being taken seriously by the Conservative Party and so on and so forth, right? Like here she is.
And privacy must be protected. There's also a cross-the-board agreement that the federal privacy and cybersecurity laws are woefully insufficient to protect Canadians in the current digital era. The rate of technology development is far outpacing the legislative protections. And while the government has a bill before Parliament to update digital privacy rules in the private sector, it has not updated the privacy legislation governing its own institutions, and this is very concerning. I also want to highlight that the concerns around privacy and autonomy are not just local. The Canadian Security Intelligence Service, CSIS, also has concerns. CSIS conducted a national security briefing on smart cities that outlines many key security concerns for governments, including the potential of hacking by foreign countries into our data. I've been discussing net zero and carbon neutral policies for years. However, it seems that people are more interested in these policies now than they were in the past, because they're largely seeing how it's impacting on their lives currently. It is also reassuring to know that the Conservative Party of Canada, under our leader, the Honourable Pierre Poilievre, is listening and understanding what's at stake if your privacy and autonomy are not protected. And that is why the Honourable Pierre Poilievre and our team are unrelenting in ensuring that the government is accountable to the people and respects the fundamental freedoms of all Canadians. I hope that you found this video informative.
So, right? Like, it's very concerning. She's not saying that, we're not going to do that. She's saying that, there's a lot of data being collected. There's concerns about privacy. There's concerns about autonomy. And the Conservative Party is listening. Is she trying to say, we're going to implement these things, but we're going to not have these traps? We're not going to have these concerns, or we're going to make sure these concerns are addressed before we roll this out? Because it really does feel like Pierre Poilievre is going to be rolling out 15-minute cities. I really, really think that. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful